Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Friday evening. It is the 14th of December 2018 and welcome Smaulgld Game Changers. Tonight's episode is entitled The Case of the Missing 302 in the Flynn Case. We're going to go through what it means and what's going on in the Flynn case. Not just the Flynn case, but the broader implications. And rather than going through it with cherry-picked ahas and this is all you need to know, I'm going to take you through the filing that the Muller team made and what he included in the filing in the sentencing document in response to sentencing that Flynn is supposed to get next Tuesday. Before we get into all that, but we're going to go through it. We're going to go through the actual documents, not some secondhand interpretation, and then we're going to analyze them together so we can look at see what people are talking about. Because what people do is they pick out a fact and they say, that is all you need to know. Trump is going down because of this, or this is going to happen because of that, and that is all you need to know. You're going to hear a lot of that. I've been hearing it all day. It's the same thing. We're going to briefly cover the Cohen talks. It's exactly the same thing. This happened. Trump met with the National Enquirer. Trump is guilty. That is all you need to know. No, we're going to go through and take a look at everything and have a good time with it. But before we do that, let's take a look at the gold and silver markets today, the equity markets, the dollar. The dollar was the only thing that was up today, except dollar and Litecoin were up today. Those are the two things. Dollar index was up. It's up to 97.42. The gold price and the equity markets were down. But let's take a look at the gold price. The gold price was up a little bit today, just a little bit. Not much, but I'm sorry, I'm showing you the wrong date. That was up on the 12th. The date that we need is today, which was the 14th, and it was not up a little bit today. It was down a little bit. Yes, it was. Not much, but it was down. There it is. Down about $4. About $4, down 0.31%. It looks like the dollar got the safe haven bid. Interesting. The issue, they say, and who knows why the markets go up or down on a given day, but the talking point today was concern about the trade deal with China, slowdown in China, impact on the global economy. I guess that could impact the dollar, make people rush into the dollar, and I don't know why it would move people out of U.S. equities, but I guess it's all tied together. But the Dow Jones was down nearly 500 points, or 2%. NASDAQ down 2.26%, down 159 points, down to 69.10. The S&P 500 down under 2,600 to 25.99, down almost 2% as well. So we're definitely seeing this 2 steps back, 1 step forward, and the dollar holding up. The gold price held, is not getting the safe haven bid, but again, that it didn't fall very much today is encouraging. However, we have fallen off of that near 1248, 1249 high in the last couple of trading sessions. Silver performed as one would expect. If we're not quite in a bull market, that silver would perform worse than gold on a day where gold went down, and indeed it did. Silver down 18 cents, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 1.2%. So silver down around 14.54. Aftermarket trading, it's at 14.53. And what does that do for the gold-silver ratio, the unsustainable greatest wealth transfer in our lifetimes in history coming up? Silver is rarer than gold. We could not live our lives without silver. Silver shorted, silver set to skyrocket. 85.15 to 1. Not a good day for the gold-silver ratio if you believe in the silver narrative. And I guess some people, you have to believe in a narrative. And I say, if you have to believe in a narrative, believe in the mug narrative. Mugs are real wealth. Get a Smaulgld mug. Can't lose much that way. Cost you under $25 depending on the mug you get. And you should have it absent damage for a lunchtime or even a lifetime. Okay, now let's take a look at cryptos. Bitcoin at 3,200, down 2.24%. Bitcoin Cash taking a beating, 78.38, down almost 10%. And just today, moments ago, Litecoin passed Bitcoin Cash in market cap. Not a good sign for Mr. Vare. Ethereum 82.80, down 3%. Litecoin at $23, up 1.4%. And Ethereum Classic at 3.62. So the cryptocurrencies still, they're not going 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They're going like 4 steps forward, 4 steps backwards, and maybe a half a step forward. Cryptocurrencies going into the end of the year on a very negative note, and remains to be seen whether the Wall Street attempt to co-opt it with new trading platforms from Fidelity, from Bakkt and Microsoft and TD Ameritrade will create new interest in the cryptocurrencies in the new year. All right, well, let's get into our topic of the evening on the case of the missing 302. Uh-oh, we got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent,
Smaulgld. This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
No, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
All right, let's take a look at before we take a look at the court filing by the Muller team today, I just want to mention, and I don't want to talk about this much more because it's just a lot of noise, and it really is, it's just partisan hope, because the campaign finance laws are clear that you must have, there's 2 elements. You have to have made a contribution to the campaign or have received a contribution, and if you did, you have to declare it. And that contribution has to be one if you made the payment in which you wouldn't have made the payment other than for purposes of the campaign. Now, paying off women, paying off men, whatever it is, meeting with newspapers and asking them to sit on stories, it's not illegal, and you would do it. You may have done it for the campaign, but you could have done it otherwise, and therefore that argument is a loser. But they want to say felony, and that's clearly just hysteria. There's no legal basis for that. You might not even get that one through the Ninth Circuit. That case, you take the statute, you line it up with the elements. That's what you have to do. And we're gonna go through today. We're not gonna go through a statute, but we're gonna go through and parse the language of the Muller documents and the 302s. But whenever you do a criminal statute or even try to assert a civil penalty, you have to match the facts with what's in the statute. And the statute regarding campaign finance law violations is very clear. Everything they're asserting that happened is not a crime. And it's not only not a crime, it's not a violation of the campaign financing laws. But I do want to give you one, and then just for fun, here's one. Did Hillary Clinton declare the CNN debate questions she received from Donna Brazil as an in-kind campaign contribution? Now, if you analyze this one probably is a campaign finance violation. She received something, was an in-kind campaign contribution. I don't think she declared it. And she would have no interest in having those questions other than the fact that it was going to help her campaign. Now, I'm not saying that they should bring a case on this, but the point is, this is an example of what would be an in-kind campaign contribution. You can argue that media coverage is an in-kind contribution. That's all nonsense. I mean, you have to be objective and say what they're doing here is they're trying to find something to bring up impeachment processes. And it actually, for me, it makes me realize how deficient these Congress people are and how partisan they are. They're supposed to understand something about the law. They don't care. They just want to get Trump. And, you know, there's ways of getting him politically. There's ways but to bring up these, they're not even, they don't even pass the laugh test if you're a legitimate lawyer. But unfortunately, you have supposed legitimate lawyers and legal analysts going on TV and say, he's going down, he's going down. I think Judge Napolitano was saying he's committed a felony or something. No. Anyway, let's move on now to what happened today, because this is important, and you'll see how I analyze stuff. All right, so Michael Flynn was the former security advisor. He was named, he never got to do his job with Trump as the incoming national security advisor. And here's what's happened with Flynn. And we have to look at this first just as the Flynn case, but then we have to step back and say, why does all this matter in the grand scheme of things with the Russian investigation and everything that's going on with Trump? This goes beyond just Flynn, but you have to work with Flynn first. You have to stick on the case, and that's what we're going to do. So back in January of 2017, Flynn was moving in. Trump was moving in. The White House was, they were moving furniture in. And the FBI said, oh, we want to talk to Flynn. And Comey said that he was asked yesterday or 2 days ago, how did you arrange this type of meeting with him where you didn't have to go through counsel? And he says, well, I just sent them over there. And he wouldn't have been able to do that with an organized presidential administration like Bush or Obama. And saying, well, I missed, in retrospect, I really missed those two administrations given what we have now. And he said that he just sent them over. Okay. He sends them over and to talk to Flynn. And that's in January of 2014. And Flynn is saying he's pled guilty to one thing. He's pled guilty to lying to the FBI. Now, they're done with Flynn. He's done all his cooperation, whatever he's cooperated with. And he's not being charged with any underlying crime, such as a Logan Act violation or colluding with the Russians on behalf of the Trump campaign. So keep that in mind, that Flynn is being considered now for sentencing for one thing only, lying to the FBI. Okay, now we're going to go through what Muller wrote in respect of why they think that we shouldn't minimize his sentence any more than he recommended, which is basically very little time. Flynn's lawyers, I think, are trying to say he shouldn't do any time. Muller responded today, and I don't think he even needed to respond today, but the reason he responded today was he was asked on Wednesday by the judge in the case, I think his name is Brendan Sullivan, to Emmett Sullivan, to turn over all documents relating to the Mike Flynn case. Meaning, if you're going to throw him in jail for lying to the FBI, I want to see how you made that determination, and I want to see what's called the 302s. Now, throwing around numbers, what are 302s? 302s are contemporaneously written documents by the FBI of interviews that they conduct. So they take notes and they memorialize them in what's called a 302. That's just the form that it's on. And Emmett Sullivan, the judge, asked for those documents, which means something is up. You don't ask for those documents unless you don't trust or you just want to make sure that your sentencing is correct. Now, the reason it's important is Emmett Sullivan, as we mentioned the other night, was a judge in a case where the FBI had brought ethics violation against a Senator Stevens. He had been senator from like 1968 to 2009, and he was one of the longest serving senators. He was up on ethics violations, and it looked like the FBI had withheld exculpatory evidence. And I remember Ballsy Ford didn't know what exculpatory meant in her interview. Exculpatory means that which would tend to favor the defendant and give him an excuse and make him look like he was not guilty as opposed to guilty. So you can array facts one way and it may look like he's guilty, but if there's exculpatory evidence like he wasn't there, even though all those things happened, well, that's exculpatory evidence and you need to provide that. And apparently in the Stevens case that Justice Sullivan presided over, that none of that was done. They didn't give over the exculpatory evidence, and he was furious when he found all this out, and he basically threw out the case, threw out the ethics charges, and then ordered a special prosecutor to investigate and prosecute the prosecutors. So that led a lot of people to believe that if you're on the cheerleading side, that he's going to throw out the Flynn case and he's going to, throw Muller in jail. That's possible, but they're not really talking about that. They should be, just because if you're going to speculate on both sides, there's enough meat there to speculate. And I'll explain why. Well, we're going to go through the documents, and today something happened that would give Sullivan reason to be a little more suspicious. That's why the title of the show is The Case of the Missing 302. So the 302 is prepared after the January 24th meeting between Flynn and the FBI. And the reason they wanted to talk to him was he had discussed things on the phone, Flynn, in December the prior year. He was on vacation. He spoke to this Russian ambassador, Sergei Kilsiak. And unbeknown to Flynn at the time, he had been under surveillance. Well, he wasn't, but Sergei Kilsiak was, because that's the way it works in this country, that all foreigners, I think, they record their conversations. What they're supposed to do is, so let's say you get a phone call from Boris, or a phone call from Sergio in Italia, or Luis in España, wherever you get a phone call from, they're going to hear it. They're going to take it down. Now, what they're supposed to do is not unmask that you're on the phone call. Your privacy is supposed to be protected, but forget the privacy of the foreigner. So Flynn kind of knows this, and he also knows that they were on the phone, that if he did have that conversation, whatever conversation he had, they would know about it, and they'd have a transcript of it. But maybe he didn't know that. That's up to debate, who knows. But by the time he had the interview, he was aware of it. It seems to be he was aware that he knew that they had listened in on his conversation. It turns out that Flynn lied to, I think it was Pence and someone else about the statements that he may have made in his conversation with the Russian diplomat. Already, this information has been leaked to the press, and they know that that's how all this stuff comes out. So now you have at the very beginning of the administration, you have the prior administration surveilling the new administration coming in and then leaking things to the press. So Flynn resigned back around February, around Valentine's Day. And he said that he didn't discuss the sanctions with the ambassador. Now, what are the sanctions of those? Well, the Obama administration had sanctions on Russia for colluding for interfering in the election. They dispelled some diplomats. And Flynn, who it's not illegal to the new national security advisor coming in to discuss, in fact, he'd have to do that, coming in as part of the transition, discuss things with his counterparts. Now, if you think about it, the FBI, it's none of their business what he's doing with the Russians. Because if the new administration wants to take a different tact with the Russians than the old administration, that's their business. And the FBI, sure, it's their prerogative to listen in on foreigner phone calls, but why do they want to talk to Flynn? Because Flynn is, as far as we know, there's no reason for him to be under investigation. And nor do they say there's any reason for him to be under investigation. Remember the FISA warrants that were ordered and brought to the judge, or created and brought to the judge that fall, were not to surveil on Flynn. They were for Papadopoulos, Carter Page, other people. They had nothing to do with Flynn. So the question is, why does the FBI want to meet with Flynn? Do they want to tell him, knock it off, don't do this kind of stuff? No, that's not their position to do that. Has he done anything wrong? No. Well, maybe he has. Maybe he's concerned that he's dealing with the Logan Act, and maybe he's kind of, maybe he said some things when he was on vacation he shouldn't have said. But again, that's not the FBI's job. That they don't deal in sanctioning or prosecuting. Remember, FBI's investigation. So there's nothing they have to investigate. Why? They already have the transcript. They already know what he said. So there's no reason for them to go ask him about what he said. All right. So all year, you don't hear much about Flynn other than they're questioning him. They're asking him a lot of questions. And then in May, there's a special counsel that has been appointed to investigate Russian collusion. Now remember, the conversations that Flynn has with the FBI, and we're going to go through those documents, that he has in January are before there's a special counsel. There's no reason to be investigating Flynn. In fact, he wasn't being investigated. In fact, he's being sentenced now for lying in a conversation he had with the FBI that was not part of any investigation. Again, they already knew what he said. They had the transcript. And as we'll see as we go through the transcript, or the 302s, they admit it. They had the transcript. So they weren't there to get any information from Flynn at all that they didn't already have. They weren't asking him, what did you mean? What about this? They just basically had the transcript in front of them and went line by line, it seems like that, and asked them what happened. But the reason we don't know exactly what happened is there were two 302s, as we'll see. The first one that was written contemporaneously from his January 2017 meeting, they didn't produce. They produced a second one from August, which recounted what they said happened in January. And the players involved are Stroke and another guy, can't pronounce his name, Pierziak or something. They were the ones who conducted the interview, and it was McCabe, former deputy attorney FBI director, who sent them. And McCabe is now gone, and he was fired for lying. Okay, so now you've got Flynn. He's already made his conversation with the FBI in January. And then finally, at the end of 2017, Flynn pleads guilty to making false statements to the FBI. And he's charged with lying to federal investigators about what the conversation he had with this Kilsiak and so on. And then, because now they have him on a charge that he's lied, and we're going to get into that later when we look at the documents, either he said he lied or we're sure that he lied. Really doesn't matter. The point is whether he pled to lying or he actually did lie, which it looks like he didn't. It doesn't make sense why he would lie, but because the documents are already there, the fact that he lied, that's the crime now that apparently has a bigger penalty than a couple of weeks. Lying to investigators. Of course, when he was interviewed, he didn't know he was being investigated, so stick with this. So he now has an issue. They've said, look, back in January, we talked to you and you lied to us, and here's the proof. We know you lied. So in order for him to end it, pleading is always better than taking it to trial and then getting hit with it. Because if they do have him on a lie and they plea it, then it's going to be a lot worse than a few weeks in jail. So they tell him, look, you work with us, whatever that means, because we don't know what information they extracted from him, whether anything. And that is all you need to know. He has cooperated and he has turned. You don't know anything. We have no idea whether that Flynn said anything that's going to help the prosecution, whether he's got nothing. We don't know anything. Oh, but why did he plea? Well, we know why he pled, because if you plea, you get a better deal. If you actually did get caught doing something, which was lying to the feds, the FBI, well, then you've got culpability. I mean, liability, either in terms of, how long you're going to go to jail. So he decides he's going to cooperate. And that makes total sense that he's cooperating now. But we don't know what cooperation he may have at all or anything to give, because remember what I said at the outset. He did not plead guilty to any type of collusion or any wrongdoing on behalf of himself or in connection with the Trump campaign. That's very important. The difference with Michael Cohen is he pled guilty to a campaign finance law violation, and they're trying to cling that on and say, well, if he was guilty and he did it with Trump and Trump told him to do it, then Trump is guilty. And I already explained why that's faulty logic, because he can go in there and plead to killing a ham sandwich as part of his overall plea agreement, and they'll just log it in. But that's not the point. That his plea on a campaign finance law, which was not litigated, he just pled guilty to it, is not binding on Trump, because if you litigate it, you would go through the elements of the crime and realize that there's no crime there because there's an alternative reason for having made the payments. Okay, but in Flynn's case, it's very important to note, they're done with him. They're now saying, okay, for all the things you've done wrong, which is lying to us, and that's the only thing that they've got him on, is you are going to go to jail and for a very, very minimal sentence. And that's where we are right now. So that was it. He pled guilty, and that was like over a year ago, and we thought that, he could have been 5 years he could have gone to jail. But now they've reduced it, and they're talking about making it a lower sentence. Now, you would think that if he pled guilty in December of 2017, it's done, over. What are we waiting for? Well, there's been all these delays in the sentencing, which means there's something up. It means that maybe they don't want to. The judge, because Emmett Sullivan may want to know more. He's not quite sure the status of what's going on. And now they're finally at a point where let's wrap this up. And let's get into now where we are. So it looked like finally Muller, they worked everything out with the court, and they said, look, let's go easy on this guy. He's been very helpful, and let's get the sentencing done. Let him serve his time. They did that with Papadopoulos. He's already served his time. Again, Papadopoulos, same thing. They get all so far, everything they've gotten these guys on have been lying to them or crimes that they managed to find that they had done that they can hold over their heads and prosecute them for, like not paying your taxes, making false statements on loan applications, and so on. Okay, so let's now take a look at what Muller responded to today. This is a document. We're going to go through it quickly. We'll try to make it interesting because it's important to understand what's going on before people draw their conclusions or just side with whatever side they're cheerleading for. So remember, Flynn spoke to the FBI. They caught him lying. At least that's what he's pled guilty to. And now it's time for sentencing. And at the last minute, the judge says, I want to see the documents where you figured out he was lying. And also he's wondering, why are you interviewing this guy anyway? As I mentioned at the beginning, what is the purpose of interviewing Flynn about his meetings with the Russians? They're not like, they have nothing to do with it. They're not policymakers. And if they already know what he says, what are they going to talk to him about? They're going to confirm that he said what he said when they know what he said? The only reason you would do that, I would think, is to find out whether you might make a false statement. Remember, once they get you on a false statement, now they have something on you. Now you have to help them in some way, and they can somewhat coerce you. All right. So here's what happens with Muller. Muller is asked to provide the documents relating to the conversations that the FBI had with him. And rather than just produce the documents, he produces this memo and then puts the documents at the end. And here's what he says. The defendant, meaning Flynn, made his decision to lie about his communications with the Russian ambassador 2 weeks before his interview with the FBI. Stop. Okay, so they already knew he was lying. He already admitted he was lying. It's already out in the open before they go and talk to him. So why do they're not even doing investigative work. They already know he's lying. It says they made his decision to lie about communications with the Russian ambassadors 2 weeks before interviewing with the FBI. So what's the point of the FBI interview? To get him to admit that he lied to them. I can't see any other reason why they're interviewing him, why they're talking to him. Now, here's another thought. Maybe they really were just going to talk to him, but I don't think so, because Comey said the other day, we sent people over there. It almost sounds like to get him, and we didn't have lawyers present because we managed to slip that in. It sounds almost like they went to go get him. But hold on. On January 12th, the Washington Post published a story asserting that the defendant had spoken with the Russian ambassador on December 29th, 2016, the day the United States announced sanctions and other measures against Russia. Now, hold on. How does the Washington Post know that Flynn had a conversation with the Russian ambassador? Well, this is about the leaks. So Flynn was probably thinking the FBI is coming to talk to him about, yeah, there's all these leaks going on. What's going on? Not realizing that it's probably the FBI that's leaking the information to the Washington Post. See how circular this is? Okay, so Muller's own opening sentence in saying that, look, we can't let Flynn get off any more than we're letting him off in sentencing, because he's already was lying. And we know he's lying because there was this story and everyone knew this happened. And okay, so then it says, and the issue was that the Post story asked whether the defendant had undercut the sanctions and whether his actions violated the Logan Act. Of course, that's what they want to believe. That theory is that he's dealing with the enemy. But again, they didn't charge him with that. Because again, he's not undermining anything. The new administration is always going to have those types of discussions coming in. If he had done that, and that was a violation of the Logan Act, and that may explain why Flynn may not have admitted to those types of conversation. He was concerned he was going to get slapped with a Logan Act violation. But we're not quite clear whether that actually came up. Okay, so then Muller goes on. Let me get you the next piece here. So you see what he's doing with Muller's making his case for, look, the guy has already lied, so let's not try to mitigate what's happening by saying he didn't have his lawyer present. He's lying about this, and he just happened to lie to us, and now we got him. Then it says, over the next 2 weeks, Flynn repeated the same false statements to multiple members of the Trump transition team. Okay, so the FBI knows that he's lied. He lied to Vice President-elect Michael Pence and Reince, I always say this one wrong, I don't want to say it wrong on air, Reince Priebus. Okay. And also to Sean Spicer. And for this is the reason that Trump said he fired him, that he lied. I mean, he's hearing about all this stuff in the newspapers, and he figures, okay, well, he better go if he's not being forthcoming. But remember, he hasn't committed a crime. And then Muller says, this is in today's filing with the court, that circumstances of the defendant's interview also show his decision to make false statements was voluntary and intentional, meaning this guy's a liar. And that's why we had him plead guilty to lying, but not because of everything he's done, not lying to Pence, not lying to the to the president's people, but to us. That's the big crime that he's committed. And in fact, he had already lied, and now we asked him and we got him to lie to us. That's essentially what this memo says, that he lied to, because they didn't catch him in a lie. They already knew he was lying. They already knew what he said, and they just went to talk to him. Why did they have to go talk to him and ask him questions about what he said? Other than to get him to say something that they would think was a lie, so they can charge him with him. Now, why would they do that? Maybe not because he has any information, but because they viewed him as dangerous. Because Flynn was very critical of the Obama administration, and maybe they just did not want him being the national security advisor to Trump. Maybe he has no information to give them. So, it says that Deputy Director Andy McCabe informed Flynn about the topic of the interview, that they needed to talk to him in light of media coverage and public discussion about his recent contacts with Russian representatives. So basically, they wanted to talk to him about the leaks. Well, they know about the leaks. They know where they came from because they probably did them. It says, when the defendant asked McCabe if the question would concern his contact with the Russian ambassador to the United States, McCabe said it would. During the interview, the FBI agents gave defendant multiple opportunities to correct his false statements by revisiting key questions. Okay. Now, this wouldn't make any sense. I still am struggling with this is because Flynn will know that they have, as we'll see in the 302, that they have the transcript. So they know what he said. So why would he sit there and say, no, they don't, see, this is why you need the actual 302. Did he say, no, I didn't say that? Or I don't, the worst he could say if presented with the transcript is, I don't remember. But it's very hard to deny your own statements when they're written and they're reading them back to, if indeed that's what they're indicating they might have done. Maybe they didn't do that. Maybe they left stuff out and they didn't help him out. And he left stuff out and they said, oh, they went away and they said, sounds like he lied. But we'll see in a minute. The 302 that they filed in August, 6 months later, said, Strzok said they didn't think that he lied. Now that's strange. Now again, you can be lying. I could lie to you and you may not think I'm lying. That doesn't mean I'm not lying. But the FBI, this is a much cleaner case because if they had the transcripts and they spoke to him and they didn't think he was lying, well then they should be pretty, their observation should be pretty spot on because they're only talking to him about what he said to the Russian guy. And also, why would Flynn lie if he knows they have the transcripts? Very, very suspicious case here. And we're missing a 302 that might provide the answers to this. And was no mistake in Muller's filing not to include what looks like the notes that supposedly were taken that are referenced in the January 302, but we're missing the notes to the 302 that would provide some explanation here. And it says here, during the interview, the FBI agents gave defendant multiple opportunities to correct his false statements by revisiting key questions. When he said he didn't remember something he knew, they used the exact words the defendant had used in order to prompt a truthful response. But then it says defendant never corrected his false statements. Now, I know what that might be. If somebody reads you something you said, you don't have to correct it because they just corrected it for you. Someone reads something what you said. Someone asks you, did you say X, Y, and Z? And you say, I don't think I said that. And then they read it to you. Okay. Then you don't say anything, but your silence means, okay, yeah, well, I must have said it. There it is. So he didn't have to correct it. So maybe he didn't correct it. I'm speculating, but I don't know. But this seems very strange that they're intent on making him own whatever he said and trying to catch him in a lie. All right. So then he says, look, the defendant, Flynn, agreed to meet with the FBI agents without counsel. Yeah, because he didn't think that this was an interrogation or he was under any type of suspicion. He thought it was about the leaks. Oh, yeah, we're all working together. Can't have all this leaking going on, Washington Post, knowing that I'm talking to the Russian ambassador. Do you see where Flynn's position is? He thinks these guys are his buddies, like the gold bugs think China's their gold buddy. He thinks the FBI's on his side. What does he need counsel for? And if he needed a counsel, they would tell him, look, this is you're kind of in trouble here. We're kind of investigating. You're a target. We're not going to arrest you. We don't need to read your Miranda rights, but we need to tell you, you need a lawyer here because there's some issues. And Comey says, yeah, well, we went right past it. Normally if we were going to do this kind of thing, we'd get White House counsel involved. But yeah, the Trump organization is so unorganized. We just sent them in and figured, well, he goes, I wouldn't have gotten away with that. Basically said I couldn't have gotten away with it. Those are the exact words. All right. So Flynn agrees to meet without counsel because from his point of view, he hasn't done anything wrong. He knows if he's done anything wrong and if he's under investigation, they have the transcript. His obligation to provide truthful information came with that agreement. That is correct. This is where the FBI is absolutely technically correct. If you agree to talk to the FBI, they don't swear you in, but the idea is that you have to provide truthful information. And Muller writes, it does not turn on the presence of counsel. That's true. Your obligation to tell the truth is not based on whether your counsel is there. However, as I just mentioned in the example I gave is, what if it was a circumstance where I said, they said, did you talk to the Russian ambassador about guacamole? And he says, I don't remember that. And they said, well, it says here you talked to the Russian ambassador about guacamole. And he's like, okay. And he doesn't correct himself. He just says, okay, well, you got the transcript. If you said I talked about guacamole, then I talked about guacamole. But he never explains that. Now, if he had a counsel with him, he would say to his client acknowledges that they talked about guacamole. By not acknowledging it, they could say he's lying. You see how that works? All right. Moreover, as the defendant has admitted, weeks after the January 24th interview, he made materially false statements and filings he provided to another branch of Justice Department. Okay, so whatever he's done, if he's lied, not like this gotcha lie, he's lied. But the penalty, he's already paid the penalty. He's gotten fired. If he's dishonest in his dealings, he's out of there. There's no other crime other than he's lied, but the penalty is attaching to his lying to the FBI. All right, let's finish up the Muller first part of his let's not let this guy skate any more than we've already recommended that he skate. So Robert Muller concludes, look, the seriousness of the defendant's offense cannot be called into question. Now, maybe it can, because is lying to the FBI about something that's really not their concern when they already know the subject matter, is it really that serious? But if just lying to the FBI about anything is serious, well, they've self-proclaimed that, and they don't make any distinction between lying about a material fact or lying about guacamole. Well, then it is serious, because if the penalty is the same, the penalty is the same, it is serious. And the court should reject his attempt to minimize it. Okay? And they basically said, based on him being a good guy and been a general for 33 years, let's just keep him at the low end of the guidelines, but nothing more. Okay. Now, they didn't need to go through this because they already made their suggestions. They already made their sentencing suggestions that he gets the low end. The only reason Muller wrote this was because they asked him for other documents. And he knows that those other documents may minimize what happened and may make the judge say, either throw it out or say, we're not going to sentence him to anything. Now, they could so here's what Muller decided to respond with. Remember, he was asked for the documents surrounding what he pled to. In other words, how did they find out that he lied? What did the notes say about him lying? Now, remember, we don't know if they caught him on one of those guacamole type of lies. We don't know if they caught him actually denying what he said, which would be utterly stupid, but he might have done that. I mean, if he did, then he's not going to get out of it. So we don't know, but what we do know is that he did not have an attorney present, and from Comey's own words, and also what you'll see in the 302s, is they encouraged him not to have one, and they did not attempt to explain to him really what they were after. Because remember, they didn't say you're under investigation for Russian collusion. Nuh-uh. They just wanted to talk about the leaks. So here is the first responsive piece that was given to the judge. And this is at the end of that memo I just read, where Muller is basically saying, look, this guy lied. It's all, we understand that he's going to get a reduced sentence, but we're not minimizing what he did here because he lied. and he lied before he talked to us. And again, I raised the issue. If you already knew he lied, then why did you go and find out that he was lying just to get it on record so you could have him lying to you so that he'd have to plead guilty to something and then lose his position? Who knows? And what was the reason they had to go to him and get him to repeat a lie? All right, so here what I would thought would be the dispositive information. These are the contemporaneous notes, or so we think, of the meeting that Flynn had with the two FBI agents, Stroke, who was later fired from the Muller campaign when details emerged that he was 110% against Donald Trump. So he was fired sometime later that summer. Not fired, taken off of the Muller probe, which was initiated in April or May of 2017. He was removed from that probe a few months later. But in January, McCabe and Comey sent Stroke and some other agent to go talk. Now, this is the contemporaneous notes that they took up with their meeting with General Flynn. And if you look at them, there's nothing here. Well, you'll see where the missing part comes in. What follow are notes that I typed shortly after my conversation with Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. I've been quoted in a few places. This represents the substance of our conversation. Typical 302 language saying, here's what follows. I had a conversation, and I hereby contemporaneously recount what was said. What's interesting is you really would think in these cases that there'd be a videotape and a transcript, not he sounded like this, and I thought this, and you paraphrase what people say. I don't like that. I would not want to be interviewed by the FBI and have them say I kind of said this and I indicated that and I inferred this, because that's what they would write. It's very, unless there's a transcript, and even a transcript isn't as good as actually having the videotape. You know, there's that one scene in My Cousin Vinny where they told him that he shot the clerk, and he says, I shot the clerk? I shot the clerk? What? Well, then in the transcript it said, he repeatedly said, I shot the clerk, I shot the clerk, and they used that as evidence against him. Okay, but in any event, this January 24th contemporaneous 302 just says that we called him on a secure phone, we talked to him, we told Flynn we had a sensitive matter to discuss, that would be the leaking. I explained in light of significant media coverage, that's the leaking, and public discussion about his recent contacts with Russian representatives. You can see Muller pulled this 302 and put it into his original memo, that he wanted to talk to him. And that Comey and I felt we needed to have two of our agents sit down with the general and hear from him the details of those conversations. So this is McCabe writing that he and Comey thought he would send Stroke and Przysiak in to talk to him. And Flynn asked if I was referring to his contacts with the Russian ambassador to the United States, and I indicated that I was. Flynn then explained he'd been trying to build relationships with the Russians. And again, he doesn't have to explain jack to the FBI. This is foreign policy. This is his NSA stuff. It's got nothing to do with the FBI. They shouldn't be investigating. And they know and they're not. That's the thing. They didn't go there to investigate whether he was doing the right thing politically or whatever. They went there under I wouldn't say it's pretext, but it was, because if they caused the leaks, then it was pretext to talk to him about these leaks, because that would be a matter of FBI interest. He then stated that I probably knew what was said. Okay, so there he's aware about them having listened. And I reiterated that in light of everything that has been said about these contacts, the important thing now for us was to hear directly from him what was said and how he felt about the conversations. Well, they knew what he said. They had the transcripts, as you'll see in the next 302. So to tell him in January, yeah, we want to know, we've seen all this stuff in the media about you talking to the Russian. In light of everything that's been said, the media actually knew what was said. Now they know that. We want to make sure we hear from you directly. It's almost like We want to catch you, it sounds like, just the way this is written, we want to catch you saying something that maybe is different. Flynn questioned how much information had been made public and asked if we thought it had been leaked. I replied that we were quite concerned about what we perceived as significant leaks. Okay, so that is definitely why they're going to go see him. That's their reason, is not to catch him, but it's to be with him, on his side about these leaks. This is bad stuff here. I mean, you know, we got to find out about these leaks. What's going on? What did you say? What's really true? What's going? That was their pretext to go out there. And then it says, Flynn questioned how much information had been public. Okay, we talked about that. I explained to Flynn that my desire was to have two of my agents interview him in as quickly, quietly, and discreetly as possible. He agreed. So you got to see that. He agreed and offered to meet with the agents today. So this was all done like Comey said, hey, why don't you run over to the White House? Hey, you don't got to call the counsel. You don't got to do anything. Just give him a call and then show up. Usually, if you think about it, we've all heard about these things. You got a scheduling, and then you got to appear in Congress. You don't just, you know, it's not like going over to your buddy's house. You call up and say, hey, I'm going to come around 2 o'clock, you know, have beer ready. I mean, this is kind of how it happened, because there was no counsel, and Flynn gave him a tour of the White House. He agreed and offered to meet with the agents today. Now, that's bad judgment. I would say, why is the FBI? But again, he's thinking these guys are his buddies. They're his gold buddies. We had some discussion about time and ultimately agreed to conduct the interview at his office at the White House at 2:30 this afternoon. And he said to him, I thought the quickest way to get this done. Now, why is there any urgency to get something done quickly? Why? Because if you do something quickly and hastily, what happens? You make a mistake. Who do they want to make a mistake? Flynn, it seems like to me. Yeah, we'll just come over. We'll forget the counsel. We'll just ask you a couple quick questions and we'll be on our way. You know, as soon as we catch you lying, we're gone. All right. If it was to get this done and have a conversation between him and the agents only. I further stated that if Lieutenant General Flynn wished to include anyone else in the meeting, like the White House counsel, for instance, I would need to involve the Department of Justice. I would have told him, okay, we'll go get the Department of Justice. But I guess Flynn was probably a little giddy, thinking he's got this great job. Never probably expected Trump to win, and now he's the head of he's a national security advisor. He stated this would not be necessary and agreed to meet with the agents without any additional participants. All right. So that's January 24th. Well, wait a minute. Where does it say? Where is the 302 from January 24th that says, we then arrived and we spoke to Flynn and here's what happened? Muller didn't provide it. Justice Sullivan said, hand over all information you have relating to this charge. Well, he provided the preliminary 302, but there's no information about what was said at that meeting. There's no contemporaneous document that Muller provided. Now, maybe there was one, but he didn't provide it. But what he did provide was one that was prepared on August 22nd. Now, August 22nd is much later. That's 7 months later. But listen to what this one says. There's the date up at the top. FBI Assistant Director, that's Peter Strzok, was interviewed in his office in the Special Counsel's office in D.C. Participants in the interview were Special Counsel, and they don't list his name, and FBI Supervisory Special Agent, they don't list his name. The purpose of the information was to collect certain information regarding Strzok's involvement in various aspects of which has become the Special Counsel's investigation. Now, think about that. This document is a document about what the FBI went back and asked Strzok, what happened in your January 24th interview. Remember, when the January 24th interview took place, there was no Muller investigation. So this is like, oh, well, we better go back and either whatever was in that 302 that we never saw or they never took down, which I doubt, they must have taken something down. They need to get it on the record now. So they call Strozak in and say, remember when you met with Flynn back in January? Yeah, well, we got this Russian probe thing going on, Muller probe, so we got to talk to you. And then it says that Strzok has had involvement in the several FBI investigations, which were subsequently taken over by the special counsel, right? So this is now not Strzok running this Flynn thing. The Flynn thing falls squarely within the Muller probe. And specifically, this investigation regarding the National Security Advisor, General Michael Flynn. At various times, Strzok and then FBI Director James Comey, Deputy Attorney General, Acting Attorney General Sally Yates, and other DOJ representatives, they were working on this investigation. Okay. This is this August 302. It gets very interesting what Strzok says, or they claim that he says, in this 302. That doesn't really tell you anything. We'll just want to make sure you have. I'll put the in the show notes. I'll give you. Yeah, here's one. You get a lot from this one. You'll see the whole 302, but I want to go through it with you and then get all of your thoughts after we've gone through the whole thing. Okay. On January 24th, 2017, McCabe told Strzok, we mentioned that, to interview Flynn. McCabe called Flynn at 12:30. We've gone through this in the first 302, and Flynn agreed to be interviewed that day at 2:30. So 2 hours notice, hey, we're coming over. Comey says, I couldn't get away with this with the Bush or Obama administrations, but how about we just come on over? No lawyers. How about a deal? And he says, okay, come on over. Then it says, McCabe may have documented the conversation. Comey was going to tell Yates right before the interview, but she called him for another reason before he had the chance. I'm not sure what that means. And they say that it gets in. Yeah, here we go. When he told her the FBI was interviewing Flynn, Yates was not happy. Now, I don't know why she wouldn't be happy. I'm not sure, but that's left up to questioning. Strzok and the FBI, his interview partner, it's a guy's name, begins with a P, got access to the White House with the assistance of an FBI White House detailee. Flynn met with them at about 2:15, which was earlier than agreed. It's a real quickie. Now, this is interesting. So this is why I don't like a 302. Flynn was alone, relaxed and jocular. What does that even mean? That's their interpretation of Flynn's mental state. It actually is helpful to Flynn, but that's not the point. If you have a transcript and a video, people can make their own determinations. Strzok may be focused on someone's demeanor more than another FBI agent, more than maybe I might be. I might focus on his tie, like Comey focused on Trump's tie. But when you have a video and a transcript, it's more objective. But anyway, Flynn was alone and relaxed and jocular. He wanted to give them a little tour of the area around his office. So he's clearly happy that he's got his new job after 33 years of being a general. He wanted to give him a little tour around the office. During the walk through the West Wing, President Trump and some movers were discussing where to place some artwork and walk between Strzok and the other agent, but nobody paid attention to the agents. Flynn did not introduce them to anyone. Okay. And that's a minor detail, but I don't know why it's in the 302. Before the interview, McCabe and others decided the agents would not warn Flynn that it was a crime to lie during an FBI interview because they wanted Flynn to be relaxed and they were concerned that given the warnings might adversely affect the rapport. Yeah. If you go over to somebody's house and you want him to be, and you're going over there to be his buddy, but really you're not because you're there to silently tape him and videotape him, of course you're not going to tell him, hey, buddy, act like you normally do. You know, when you talk about all that stuff you stole and the people that you killed, because I just want to get it on tape. Well, hold on. There's an entrapment there because why do they want him to be relaxed and adversely affect the rapport? The rapport they want, it sounds like, is they want him to think that they're his buddy and that they're to help him with this leaking stuff. Because if they were to tell him, no, really what we're here for is we want to make sure We want to catch you lying. So we're not going to tell you to get a lawyer, because if you do, your lawyer's going to catch on and say, no. You said this, okay? You said this. And then the lawyer would make sure that there was a transcription and so on. It says here they admit that they did not want to warn him that it was a crime to lie. Not that they have to warn him, but they actually point out why they don't want to warn him. They want him to kind of mess up, it sounds like. Flynn was unguarded. This is, again, impression, but it helps Flynn that they said this. And clearly saw the FBI agents as allies. If I were writing this, I'd say Flynn was unguarded and clearly saw the FBI agents as his buddies. He talked about various subjects, including hotels where they stayed during the campaign. See, they're chit-chatting. He doesn't think that he's being investigated, including hotels. And here's the thing. If they really were there just to help him about the leaks, they would never turn around and say, aha, you were lying and now we're going to prosecute you. Clearly they're out for him. Because if the FBI and you are working on a case together, and you are their buddy and they're your buddy, even when you talk to you lie. You may inadvertently lie, and people lie. You don't then say, okay, well, now's my chance to have you brought up on charges. So they had chit-chat talk, but Flynn always seemed to work his way to the subject of terrorism. So they're hanging around chatting about what it's like to work in Washington. Flynn was so talkative and had so much time for them that Stroke wondered if National Security Advisor did not have more important things to do than have a relaxed, non-pertinent discussion with them. Now they're editorializing. Now they're saying Flynn's basically a goof-off, and all he wants to do is chat with FBI agents. But that's exactly what they wanted him to do. They wanted to have a rapport. He gives them the rapport. He's hanging out with them like they're his buddies, and they're saying, what kind of moron is this? Doesn't he know that he should be doing work instead of talking to us who's trying to entrap him? All right. So it was decided before the interview. Let's see here. The next thing that they say, that we would not warn Flynn that it was a crime to lie during the interview. Okay. It was decided before the interview, the agents, that if Flynn said he did not remember, they would use the exact words Flynn used to try to refresh his recollection, indicating that they had a transcript. So they're going to ask him about what they already knew. It says, it was decided before the interview that the agents, blah, 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 all cut out. Flynn said he did not remember something they knew he said. So if they knew he said something, they would use the exact words Flynn used, such as, to redact it, to try and refresh his recollection. This clearly says that the FBI went in there, try to make him appear relaxed. He was relaxed and jocular, and then editorialized that he must be a lazy, smiling guy who's got nothing else better to do than to chat with us. But we're going in there with the transcript. And now, why would they do this? And if he doesn't, if he says he doesn't remember, we're going to pull it out in front of him to try to refresh his recollection. That means Flynn knew that if he did say something incorrect, he knew they had a transcript. So I still don't get, why would he lie? I think maybe the lie is like, okay, you read it to me. This is my guess, is they read stuff to him and he probably said, just nodded, didn't even say anything. He figured, okay, well, we're buddies here. If I said it, I said it. Glad we know that. Now let's get into this. We need to work on this leak stuff here. If Flynn would still not confirm what he said, they would confront him or talk him through it. Then there's redacted stuff, so I don't know what happened after that. But the idea clearly here is they're saying when they went in, they were ready for him. They were going to read him the text of the Riot Act that he had written and see if he agreed with it. But there's no need to do that. If they know he said it, they heard, unless there was some technical difficulties with the phone and they say it says unintelligible, we didn't understand that point. What did you say there? That's not what it says. They basically saying we're going to go there. we're going to read stuff to him, and we're going to say, huh, what about it? He's going to say, what about it? And they're going to say, did you say it? He's going to say, probably, I don't remember. Because, would you remember a phone conversation a month ago? Word for word? Of course not. Stroke conducted the interview and was primarily responsible for taking notes and writing the 302. Stroke conducted the interview and, see how quickly I read that? Redacted, was primarily responsible for taking the notes and writing the 302. We didn't see that. We haven't seen that guy's notes. All we saw was the preliminary setup. We have not seen the notes to the 302 that was written contemporaneously in January. We got this after the fact summary 6 months later. Throughout the interview, Flynn has a very sure demeanor and did not give any indication of deception. He did not parse his words or hesitate in any of his answers. So now they're saying Flynn didn't look like he was trying to lie to us. That's their interpretation. He only hedged once, which they documented in the 302. Stroke and the other guy both had the impression at the time that Flynn was not lying or did not think he was lying. Now, how would they get that impression? Their job, they're trained to see if somebody's lying. And it's pretty easy to do if you got the transcript in front of you. You read it to him, and then he says, yep, I guess I said it. Flynn Stroke is bright but not profoundly sophisticated. Again, what is this taking swipes at Flynn? Again, it's almost like we're running the show here. You're not in charge of the administration security detail. We are. We're here to make sure that a bozo like you, who's smiling and enjoying himself, is going to take this a lot more seriously. The agents left Flynn in a collegial, positive way. There was no discussion of follow-up. So Flynn went about smiling and walking around thinking that, yeah, okay, I had a great time today. The FBI guys were here. What fun. Stroke and the other guy returned to FBI headquarters and briefed McCabe and we don't know who on the interview. McCabe then briefed Comey. Stroke was aware that later argued the FBI's decision to interview Flynn. Now, it sounds like, and you can't really tell because it's redacted, that Stroke sounds like he didn't think it was a good, nor did Sally Yates, that it was a good idea to interview this guy. Because maybe, why did they interview him? What's the point of interviewing him? They already, in a sense, they have what they need. They don't even need that information. They already know what he said. Why do they go there to talk to him? They don't even need that information because whatever Flynn said, he said. Whatever conversations he's going to have with Russians, he's going to have with Russians. They're going to be in charge of the administration. The FBI works for that administration. He hadn't done anything illegal. They weren't going to charge him with anything illegal. It sounds like they only went there. They don't even know why they went there. It sounds like Yates and Stroke, like, why are you going there? Actually, it does look, in retrospect, this isn't good Russian collusion evidence that you'd want to prepare. It looks like you went there to set him up. It was like, what? Someone like me was saying, why did you go there? Someone like Yates, who's on their side, said, what are you going to go ask him about? It's going to look like you're there for no other reason, especially if you don't have a lawyer, to see if he's going to make up a story, and then you're going to do what? Get him in a lie? Think about it. The guy, he's pleading guilty to lying to FBI agents who he thought were his buddies. I don't get why they would arrange that, but that's apparently what they did. But the real key is, what is in the missing 302? We don't know. All right, I think that is all we have on the 302s. So you do see that in some respects, this particular thing is a tempest in a teapot. Why? Because it has nothing to do with Russian collusion. But here's the interesting part. It does create a narrative. Remember, we always talk about narratives. That people around Trump are getting indicted left and right. Top guy, Flynn. National security. He's indicted. He's gonna go to jail. What kind of bumbling administration is this? Now we see Flynn saying it looks like Strozak saying Flynn's just walking around. He's got nothing else better to do. He's talking to the movers. He's smiling like a goofy idiot. He's got nothing else better to do than talk to us. How does he know that? He's there for half an hour, and he's made the determination that Flynn is just there to hang out. And, he doesn't really take his job seriously. He's not sophisticated, are the terms. So it appears maybe that's what the whole purpose of this is to create the impression that these people are not serious people. All right, well, let's see what you guys are saying. As far as I'm concerned, this whole thing is also nothing. Now, the real key is, what is the judge going to do about it? Because Flynn and Manafort are not leading to any Russian collusion charge. And it appears now they're off that. They're now going to try to focus on getting Trump for campaign finance violations. As I already talked about, that's a loser too. That's not going to go anywhere. But doesn't matter. He's not. He is going to get the House will impeach him, but the Senate won't vote to convict. But the point is, you do not want to be president and run for re-election after you've been impeached. So they've done enough to say, look at all these guys. They're all bad guys. This is an illegitimate president. He does a lot of bad things. He's not organized. He's causing a lot of trouble. And then he won't get removed from office, but they think maybe he won't get reelected in 2020. That's what I think is happening, because legally, none of this stuff, it's nothing. But you hear people in the media talking about it as if it's as if this is some type of big deal. All right, let's take a look at what we got here. We got everybody saying hello. Good evening. Good evening. All right. Well, we don't have many comments here today. So, all right. We're going to leave it at that. Maybe you want to go back and listen to it if you missed a part of it. But that is a full analysis of the documents today, and we will see you tomorrow.